Good evening. This is the Auburn Board of Health. It is Thursday, February 15th. It's now 6:02 p.m. and I shall call this meeting to order. First item now is to review our agenda. Anything to add or remove?
No, we do not.
Do we have a set of minutes to review?
No minutes for this meeting.
Oh.
We'll save those for next time.
Okay. Eric, anything to add or?
Nope.
Nope. So we'll just move right along to the hearing scheduled at 6 p.m. This is a dangerous dog hearing. I'd like to introduce myself. I am Steve Nordborg, the Chair of Health.
My name is Eric Otteson. I'm a member of the Board of Health.
I'm Darlene Coyle, Director of Public Health.
Amy Contois, Animal Control Officer.
Eileen Alexander, Assistant Health Director. Paula Conway, Administrative Assistant.
Thank you. The purpose for this hearing is for the board to hear the evidence concerning a dog at 23 Perry Street to be a dangerous dog, and to make a determination as to what action to take, if any, regarding the dog involved. The board will hear from the representative of the town that has been involved in investigating this matter. The board will hear from residents of the town and other witnesses involved, if there are any. And the board will then give the dog owner the opportunity to speak, if he or she chooses. The board will then continue or close the hearing and make a decision as to what should be done in this case, and will issue an order accordingly. Any members of the audience prepared to speak or present evidence to the board? And for my dog officer and Director of Public Health, this hearing will be done under oath. For all those that are prepared to discuss, present evidence, or submit any information to the board, would you kindly raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? If you do, say I do.
I do.
Thank you. Ms. Contois?
Thank you. So we're here tonight to discuss some issues that have been reported through animal control regarding the dog known as Brownie at 23 Perry Street. They're provided in your packet. There is a timeline of information of the history of activity at the property with Brownie. So Brownie is, we have her listed in our dog license registration as a 7-year-old spayed female Labrador Beagle mix owned by Lisa and William Chapdelaine at 23 Perry Street. So the overview of the situation is we've received notification of 3 bites that have occurred at the property, with Brownie being the biting dog, to 3 separate children. So to a 3.5-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 16-year-old over the course of about a year and a half. So that was between June 2016 through November 2017. At the time, or currently, as far as I'm aware, there aren't any young children living at the home. The youngest child there is a 16-year-old, but there are children that frequent the home and visit. And we don't have a history of any other violations or issues at the property with Brownie. There's been a consistent licensing history, and outside of the scope of the bites, we haven't had any other issues. So no loose dog complaints or barking dog complaints or anything along the lines of that. So for more in depth of the timeline, so I was first notified in, it was October 27th, 2016, by a adult daughter of Ms. Chapdelaine that a 6-year-old was bitten in the face on the 26th of October. So the bite resulted in the child requiring 6 stitches at St. Vincent's Hospital. While I spoke with Ms. Rodwell, the adult daughter of Ms. Chapdelaine, she did inform me that one of her other daughters had been bitten in June of that year, June 2016, another bite to the face. Unfortunately, that bite, we were never notified by any person involved or at the home, and we didn't receive notification from the hospital. So hospitals are supposed to actually give animal control officers and animal health inspectors a bite report, which then results in a quarantine of the dog. Since we never received that notification, that specific bite was never investigated because we weren't aware that it happened. And Ms. Rodwell, notified me that her younger sister had also been bitten by the dog several years ago when the dog was a puppy. But again, we don't have any documentation of that bite, so no investigation ever happened with that bite. So at the time that I spoke to Ms. Rodwell, we hadn't received a notification yet from the hospital. So I did reach out to St. Vincent Hospital in Worcester, where her 6-year-old daughter was seen and received the stitches, and they did send me over a copy of that bite report. So following receiving notification from the mother of the child and also the hospital, I did visit the property the same day, so October 27th, to try to speak with the Chapdelaines and issue a quarantine based on the evidence that the bite occurred. But at that time, there wasn't anybody home, so I did leave a tag on the door requesting a call back from the homeowners, which they did the following day. And I did speak to Ms. Chapdelaine about the incident. She did also state that the bite occurred. The description that I was given of the bite was Brownie was in a room off of the kitchen, sitting down waiting for a treat, when the 6-year-old came up behind the dog Brownie, put her arms around the dog, and the dog turned and snapped. Ms. Chapdelaine did say that after the bite occurred, Brownie ran and hid under a desk or a table in the home after. She also, Ms. Chapdelaine, didn't dispute at that time the bite that had occurred with the 3.5-year-old. So that was another granddaughter that was visiting in the home. She did say that the granddaughter, she believed, stepped on Brownie while Brownie was sleeping and startled the dog, woke the dog, and the dog ended up biting the 3.5-year-old in the face as well. So at that time, when I was speaking with Ms. Chapdelaine, we did discuss ways to manage Brownie's behavior to prevent any future bites. My immediate suggestion was removing Brownie from the situation, putting her in a different room if people were visiting, so that way she couldn't physically have any altercations with the children, since at this time it did seem pretty much contained to children visiting in the home. Initially, she wasn't comfortable with keeping Brownie away from the family for long periods of time, but I did discuss with her that essentially it's more fair to Brownie to remove her from the situation, put her where she feels more comfortable by herself, where a bite could be avoided, than having her be uncomfortable, potentially leading to another bite, and she was agreeable to that. So the quarantine was issued at that time on the 28th, and I did provide Ms. Chapdelaine with some educational material regarding dog behavior and dog bites to children. And I do want to note that there were some discrepancies between the stories regarding how the bites occurred between Ms. Chapdelaine and the adult daughter, Ms. Rodwell, the mother of the 2 children. Just some discrepancies around the interactions between the children and the dog, and the level that the children might have been playing with the dog. So then at the end of the quarantine, I did release it on November 6th, and at that point, the Chapdelaines were still agreeable to the recommendations that I had made to them when I issued the quarantine. So keeping Brownie separate, kind of just taking her out of the situation, because at that point we hadn't had any other issues with her. It was just confined to small children. And then November 9th of 2017, we received an anonymous report of a dog bite to the face of a 16-year-old at the home of 23 Perry Street. When I visited the property, I did meet the 16-year-old at the door, and she did have a cut from about the tip of her nose, about 1 inch long, across heading towards the bridge. And she did say that the scratch was from a bite that had occurred the day before. She identified that as she was leaving for school, she leaned down towards Brownie, who was on the couch, and Brownie jumped and bit her on the nose, resulting in that scratch. So because of that incident, Brownie was placed on another 10-day quarantine. And in between the time when that quarantine was issued and when the quarantine was released on November 19th, I did speak in depth with Ms. Chapdelaine about Brownie, and the scope of the issues that have come about pretty recently. 3 bites in a year and a half, in my opinion, was a significant behavior change from her, since we hadn't had any other reports of issues with her. Ms. Chapdelaine did describe some measures that she was taking since the last time I had been there in 2016 to the present, which included keeping Brownie muzzled when company was over and placing Brownie on a dog run, so having her tied outside when the family and when the children and everyone else was outside as well. So I did speak to her about the type of muzzle that was being used. At that time, the muzzle was a nylon muzzle that enclosed Brownie's face, which does serve its purpose in preventing a bite, but it also restricts a dog's ability to pant, to eat, drink. Ms. Chapdelaine did say that she would give Brownie breaks and put her in a different room so she could remove the muzzle and allow her to drink. My concern at that time was by having that muzzle and for the dog not to be able to exhibit normal behaviors like panting and drinking, that can cause additional stress. So if the dog was already in a stressful environment, that could cause more stress. So I did recommend that Brownie wear a basket muzzle. So a basket muzzle is a muzzle that goes over the face that has a grid pattern to it. So it allows the flow of air, allows the dog to open its mouth to be able to pant, to cool itself off, and drink, which is more suited for extended use of a muzzle. I did speak to Ms. Chapdelaine about my concerns with her 16-year-old daughter in the home. When I had first gone to the property regarding the most recent bite, the daughter had mentioned that she was comfortable with Brownie in the home, but not comfortable being around Brownie at that point. When I mentioned this to Ms. Chapdelaine, she did tell me that her daughter did say she was uncomfortable at first, immediately following the bite, but was gaining her comfort back around the dog, was allowing the dog back in her room and back on her bed. I did recommend at that point that Brownie not be allowed on the furniture, beds in particular, where she's going to be at a higher level, so if she were to react, she's that much closer to somebody's face. Ms. Chapdelaine did state that since my previous visits in 2016, she had been reading dog training and behavior books, and that she had taken Brownie to training classes at Petco, but that Brownie wasn't currently enrolled. She did also state that during the quarantine in that November period, that Brownie had injured herself by falling off of a deck in their yard, and she had to take her to their veterinarian. And Ms. Chapdelaine informed me that the veterinarian stated that Brownie had limited vision. Ms. Chapdelaine stated that she thought that might have been the cause of the most recent bite. So it was her thought that when the daughter leaned over coming around the corner, that it might have spooked Brownie because she might not have seen that physically happening. I did explain to Ms. Chapdelaine that due to Brownie's multiple bite history, that a dangerous dog hearing may be requested. And at that point, I strongly recommended that because of the serious nature of the behavioral issues that Brownie has, that she seek help from a qualified dog behaviorist or certified dog trainer. And I do want to note that both times all of the occasions where I've met Brownie, she hasn't been an outward aggressive dog to me, but she does exhibit signs of being a very excitable and anxious dog, a little jumpy when I've met her. So a dog that, unfortunately, as the history shows, when she's uncomfortable, She has gotten to the point where she learns to react to that uncomfort by biting. So I did reach out to Brownie's veterinary office the following day on November 20th, because Miss Chatelain did mention that she had brought Brownie to the vet during the quarantine period, and mentioned the issue with her eyes. And the veterinary office did say that they did not believe that Brownie's behavior and the recent bite history was related to vision or other health concerns. So that same day, on November 20th, I did reach out to Ms. Chatelain by email, and again strongly recommended that she get Brownie evaluated by an accredited or certified trainer or behaviorist, and that I wanted to see an evaluation by December 4th. And I provided her with a list of contact information for several certified and qualified trainers in the area. And I did reiterate to her that Brownie shouldn't be kept in the nylon muzzle for an extended period of time, that she should be wearing a basket muzzle if she's being muzzled in the home. I did receive a response from Ms. Chatelain on December 1st of 2017 with a evaluation from a trainer at the local Petco, a dog trainer from that facility. And that she had reached out to the trainers that I recommended, the 3 facilities, but she had only received a call back from one of the 3, and they did, she was quoted $500 for a consultation with that facility. And then 2018, so most recently, on January 5th, I notified Ms. Chatelain by email that Brownie and her recent bite history was scheduled for discussion at the Board of Health. Ms. Chatelain did respond and say that unfortunately at that time, due to an illness in the family, she wasn't able to attend the meeting, but that Brownie was currently wearing a basket muzzle when company was over in the home, and that she was still intending on enrolling Brownie in training but hadn't done so yet. So then I do have some additional evidence included in the packet. So you will find the first picture is a picture of the 3.5-year-old with the wound to the upper lip. This picture was submitted by the child's mother. And then the second picture is the 6-year-old child. That was the bite that occurred October of 2016. And again, another wound to the lip. That picture was also submitted by the mother. And then finally, in the packet is the evaluation from the Petco trainer that Ms. Chatelain did send to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have anything, Darlene?
Everything that the animal control officer has presented, she has also reviewed with myself and the assistant director. Additionally, she did submit to me her concerns for the request for the dangerous dog hearing.
Okay, thank you. And we have,
Ms. Chatelain.
would you like to step up and have a seat?
This is Hannah. If you want to.
And
And I also have a friend of the family here. So.
For the record, your name again, please?
Lisa Chaplain.
Lisa, and you are under oath, you recall?
Yes.
Thank you.
Brownie has since been enrolled, since my father has come out of the hospital in training. She's had training with the Petco trainer, and she's making some great progress. As a matter of fact, my granddaughter was at the house the other night. Brownie does wear a muzzle every time the grandchildren are over, no matter what. If they're there for 5 minutes, if they're there for 2 hours, she does take breaks to have food and water. It is a basket muzzle, but she still needs time to take breaks for food and water, and we keep her separated from the kids. Brownie is learning to sit when people come in the door. She is learning to obey when she is told to do something. As a matter of fact, the other night when she was there, Brownie sat until my granddaughter approached her and acknowledged her presence, and then she stayed sitting the whole time she was there by my side. So without a leash, just on command. So she's making some progress. It may take some more time to make that progress. Brownie is also never outside by herself unless she's gone out to do her business. She's never, when we're outside, we take her out, we chain her up or tie her up, and she's quite a big distance away from the children. So she's not near them except during the winter, the colder months. And when she's in the house, she's now wearing the muzzle when they're in the house. Brownie is also considered by my husband's therapist a emotional support dog. So she's there for him most of the day. He's got anxiety and depression, and she's there as a soothing animal for him. Hannah hasn't had any issues with Brownie since she's learned to keep her face out of Brownie's face. The 2 bites, and it's unfortunate that it did happen. The first one to the youngest, I had just broke my back. I was in a chair. The dog was under the chair. I was just home from the hospital. The dog was under the chair sleeping, and she stepped on her face. And that's why she bit her. She startled her out of sleep, and she bit her. The second, with the food, she came up behind her and grabbed her and wrapped her arms around her neck and pulled her away from the food. And I've told them 1,000 times, don't pull the dog away from food, and don't pull food away from the dog. So, and it's unfortunate that it happened. I feel really bad about it, but Amy said herself, this is justified. That's a justified reaction. And it says it in the paperwork that she gave to me also. As far as Hannah goes, how many times can you tell a teenager something? Don't put your face near the dog. And Hannah has been working with her also, involved in her training, and everyone in the house is involved in the training. So even the grandchildren, when they come over, they are learning to give her a command to sit or to stop, and we give them treats. If she sits for them, she gets a treat. I don't know what else. I've got letters from friends that visit that have never seen any kind of aggressive behavior. Family members, her friends. That's that fly up there. Sorry. I don't know if there's anything else you want to know.
Once we receive all the evidence, we'll go through a period that we may be asking questions more specifically.
Okay.
So,
All right. Like I said, she's never off her line when she's outside. She's always in the house unless we're outside, and when she is outside, she's tied up and she's kept quite a distance away. So the kids do visit quite a lot during the summer months, not the winter months. So the reason why we keep her that, so she has her place to run and they don't go bother her. But I had gotten nylon muzzle to start with to see how it worked. But the basket muzzle does work better. And she's used to wearing it whenever the kids are in the house. So they've become more friendly amongst themselves between the dog and the two little ones. They're not afraid of her anymore, where they used to be. And now they approach her and they talk to her because she has the muzzle on.
Thank you.
Okay, there's some letters. And I have, like I said, I have a family friend here that she's there a lot, quite often, and she's never seen any aggression from Brownie. Yeah. Yes, she was very general in that letter. If you need something more specific from her,
Okay. That's your husband's
that's
therapist?
my husband's therapist. Did I give you? She's not, she's a very, she can be a very affectionate dog, but I've never, unless there's some kind of commotion going on in the house, I've never seen her get aggressive to anyone. If yelling ensues in the house, she's gonna get, she's gonna get on her guard, which I expect every animal to do if there's yelling and screaming going on. So if we have a yelling match going on from upstairs to downstairs, she's like not sure if she should be ready for something or. But we have never had, it's unfortunate they did happen, but we've never really had any problem with her. Just those incidents. And the first one with Abby, I fell off that wall 2 years ago, so it's been quite a while since the bite between Abby and Isabella.
Anyone else that wishes to present any evidence to the board?
Oh, so just know I am a family friend, and I'm
Did you-
over there a lot. My name's Rhonda.
Rhonda
Yeah, McLaughlin.
McLaughlin,
Yeah.
thank you. And you are also under oath?
Yes.
Reopen the
Yep.
meeting, thank
And
you.
just so you know, I'm over there a lot, and I've never seen Brownie be ever aggressive towards anybody. I mean, she runs around, like if I'm over there in the summertime, she runs around having a good time by herself. I've never seen her aggressive towards anybody. I've never seen her growl at anybody. A dog's gonna be a dog. You gonna be at a dog, especially if it's a rescue dog. Dogs are gonna defend themselves. I mean, if someone came at me at my food I was eating, I'm a fat girl. I'm gonna defend myself, okay? A dog's gonna be a dog. If you go after a dog while they're eating, any dog's gonna be like that. My dog, not my dog's never bit anybody, but you go up behind that dog, my dog's been abused. He's gonna turn around and startle too. So I've never seen Brownie ever aggressive, ever at all.
Thank you. Anyone else to present evidence? Yes, sir.
Chairman, can I ask a question? I'm not a witness to any of this. I'm just observing what I'm hearing tonight. My name is Alan Rafferty. I'm a resident of the town of Auburn.
Excuse me, just one moment, sir. I think there might be a period for question after we get on the testimony.
We'll get to a period of questions in a little bit, thank you. Anyone else? Evidence pretty much covered everything?
The animal control officer.
So there was a statement made that I had stated it was a justified reaction that.
You said that it was
Brownie-
justified.
Unfortunately, I don't agree that those were the words that came out of, that I said. While I can possibly understand Brownie's reaction, knowing about animal behavior and knowing how a stressed dog might react under those circumstances, I would never consider a dog bite to a child justified in these circumstances. I mean, there's definitely things surrounding what happened that caused Brownie's reaction, but in the overview, it was a 3.5-year-old and a 6-year-old, and the adults that are present do have to take responsibility for the action of the children at that time.
I'd also like to add that my daughter, Allison, likes to kick and push my dog around while she's in my home. So you're getting all kinds of information from Allison, some of which may not be true because she kicks the dog and abuses the dog. She doesn't like
Well,
the dog.
I'm speaking specifically to the two
Right,
instances with the two daughters, your grandchildren, so anything related
But
to
you
Allison Rodwell
specific-
taken out of it. She
right.
was not, it's my understanding from what I heard from both of you, that at least the bite that was reported that we were able to investigate, that she was not in the room when the bite occurred.
No, she wasn't. But at the same time, I specifically remember you saying that it was a justified bite because the child took the food from the dog.
That's not what I have in the report, is that
That's-
she was
that's-
being given a treat.
She was
and
given
she
a
wrapped
treat
her
and she
arms
wrapped,
around.
yes.
So that doesn't
And-
involve taking the
And
food
pulled her
away
away
from the
from the
dog, but
food. So in her mind, that's taking the food away from her. I don't know how anybody else would interpret that, but if somebody grabs you by the neck like this and pulls you away from the food, she's taking you
And
away
there
from the
were-
food.
From my understanding, there were 2 adults present at the time when that bite occurred.
No, it was me.
It was your husband sitting down giving her the treat?
No,
from what
I was giving her the
from what you
treat.
told me. Okay.
I was here, the treat was here, the dog was here. Isabella came up behind her, grabbed her from behind, and pulled her away from the treats. She was getting a treat because she did something right, and unfortunately, Isabella grabbed her from behind.
Thank you. If there's no further evidence, I'll take a motion to close the evidentiary portion.
So moved.
I'll second that. And all in favor? Aye. At this point, we'll open the hearing to discussion. Did you have any questions for anyone specifically, generally?
I did. Ms. Contois, in regards to the 2 bites that you're talking about, or the 3 bites that you're talking about, and we have evidence on tonight, in your professional opinion, was the dog protecting or defending itself during those times?
Without being present at the time that the bite occurred, either of the bites occurred, I can't really speak to the dog and if it was protecting itself. The information overall, the dog wasn't being harmed. Depending on Brownie, depending on the situation, I can't specifically say if she saw a hug from a child as a threat. But again, if there's a dog in the home with known being uncomfortable in situations involving children, I think the responsibility does lie within the adults in the home to remove the dog from the situation, instruct the children. I wouldn't consider this a child's fault. Children are children, they don't always listen, but that's why they need to be supervised, especially any child around a dog. Unfortunately, bites to a child's face are the most common bites that occur. One of the reasons being dogs and children are often at face level, so it's the first thing that they can go to, but it does take responsibility on the owners and the people in the home to prevent something like that from happening. So if Brownie was in any situation where she felt threatened, it sounds like the family knows Brownie well, and they should recognize the situations where those instances might happen and prevent it.
Okay. And I did have a question for you, Ms. Chapdelaine. We have a letter that you supplied us from a Wayne Rodwell. One of the complaining parties is Allison Rodwell.
That's my father.
So
He's-
Wayne is your father,
Yes, he's
Alice.
Allison's my daughter.
Okay.
Rodwell is my maiden name.
Okay.
Yep. He's disabled. Brownie recognizes that when he comes in the door, and he walks with a cane, so she sits at his feet when he walks in the door.
Okay. So just so Wayne is Allison's father?
Allison's grandfather.
Grandfather, okay.
Yes.
One more question. In regards to the behavioral health services assessment by the nurse practitioner, was written on February 13th. It asks, it says that your husband, Ms. Chapdelaine, would benefit from an emotional support dog, as it would be his condition. Does Brownie have any supporting paperwork that it
No,
is
she
actually
doesn't.
deemed? It is not?
No, she's been with us since she was 6 months old.
Okay.
She's accustomed to being able to tell when we have issues. I have diabetes. She's aware when my sugar gets too low or too high. She does sense it. She senses when my husband's having an anxiety attack. Because she's been with the family for so long, she's aware of these things.
Okay. All right. I don't have any further questions at this time.
Anyone in staff have any further questions or comments for Ms. Chapdelaine?
I would like to add that the emotional support aspect of it, this is also the first that I've been made aware
Okay.
that Brownie's considered an emotional support dog, which is different from a service dog.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Ms. Chapdelaine, do you have any further questions or?
No.
You, sir, had a, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Now, so I understand the difference. The one piece I'm not clear on, is there formal training for an emotional support dog, or what deems that to be able to be labeled as an emotional support dog?
Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's fine.
An emotional support dog or an emotional support animal, it can vary to the species. Just has to be an animal that the physical presence of the animal does offer some kind of emotional easement to the owner or the person, versus a service dog is trained to perform a task or tasks for the person that it's providing service to. A service dog is given rights under the American Disability Act, whereas an emotional support dog does not through the ADA, but does have rights for housing and travel through the Fair Housing Act.
And given that you would say that that Brownie would be an emotional support dog to you, given what that definition was? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Yes, hi, Al Rafferty. I've just stopped by. I wanted to listen in on this, and I just wanted to make a few observations. First of all, I'm a retired letter carrier from the U.S. Postal Service for 30 years. I've had a lot of encounters with dogs. You might even call me a dog psychologist at this point, from what I've had to encounter. I will say that I like to make a few observations. It is true, when a dog is eating, you cannot approach a dog that is eating. They resort to their wildness when they're eating food. It's a threat to be encountered when they have food in their mouths. They consider that you're stealing it from them, and they react like that. Second of all, it sounds like kids were always involved in these fights, and kids are wonderful, God bless them, but they can be a little bit hyperactive and they can excite the dogs. So sometimes it's the kid's responsibility that he got the dog excited. The dog doesn't know better. It's bad that when kids get bit in the face. Absolutely. The good news is a bite in the face will heal very well. It sounds like family members were bit by this dog. I don't understand why the things that have happened within the family should be concerned to the town, because she's not filing a complaint against herself for the kids. So it's recommendable that the town feels that the dog could be dangerous and someone wanted the complaint to be made, so it's recommendable that you're doing that. But the other bites were all family members, and so it's like, this is going to happen. The dog was quarantined. I assume then the dog didn't have his rabies shots, and that's why he was quarantined. Otherwise, why would you quarantine him if he's had a rabies shot? I don't quite understand that. If the dog was bit, was it always on your property?
Yes.
They were on their property, so somebody was on their property. I think you're really putting this family through an awful lot, quite frankly. You got a family where a gentleman's got anxiety problems, this lady's got diabetes, she broke her back, and they get one comfort from their little dog. Okay? I really think we should cut him some slack.
So to touch on a couple of the points that you made, thank you for your opinions and the information you provided. So the quarantine process, that happens regardless of a dog's rabies vaccine status. It is a mandated process by Massachusetts general law. Any cat, dog, or ferret that bites or scratches and breaks skin is required to go under a 10-day quarantine period, regardless of if they've had the rabies vaccine or if they've lapsed in that aspect.
Do you
Just
have
for
any idea why
insurance.
that's required?
It's just for the insurance that the animal 10 days following that bite does not show symptoms of rabies.
Well, if they have
There's
a rabies
always
shot,
there's always the chance that a vaccine could fail. Rabies is a fatal disease. We want to make sure that anybody that's bitten is safe and doesn't have to for themselves go through the rabies post-exposure vaccines, and just to ensure that that the biting animal was healthy at the time and had no chance of passing rabies on to the person that was bitten. And just so you're aware, it is a 10-day quarantine at home, generally speaking. So as long as the conditions are suitable, the animal remains in the home with the owner, and it's considered more of a watch period. With these types of quarantines than removal from the property or that. And to address the question of why the town is bringing this forward, because it was bites that occurred inside the home. It was brought forward to a hearing because it is something that we recognize as concerning. 3 bites within a year and a half, regardless to if it was members within the home or if it was members to the public. To me, that's a concerning amount of times. And
Actually, it's been longer than 3 bites in a year and a half. That first bite happened over 2 years ago.
the first bite was June 2016. The second bite that got reported was October 2016, and then November 2017.
Okay.
So,
I don't know how to tell them. Sorry, I'm getting old.
I have a question. Are you done?
Yes, so I just wanted to add that. So yes, the bites did occur to children in the home, but we did find it necessary to bring it forth to a meeting to prevent any future bites from happening, because at this point, the worst damage that we've seen with this dog is 6 stitches to the lip, but where there is a history of bites to the face, we want to make sure that another bite to the children in the household or anybody visiting isn't bit again, isn't bit worse. Unfortunately, you hear horror stories of children that receive figure-altering bites to the face. And again, while maybe the dog's interactions in the household can be controlled by the members in the household, there's no guarantee that at some point in the rest of Brownie's life that she may never interact with another child outside of the home, whether it be in the street, at a store, at a vet clinic. I know you said she doesn't leave the home often.
She did
but
interact with a child recently at Petco during training, and she sat when she was told. She didn't move. The parent was perfectly okay with approaching Brownie and the child reaching out to Brownie. And she, the trainer was right there. She did everything she was supposed to do. So,
And I guess my concern with a dog that has a history of bites to children's faces is allowing the interaction with a stranger's child. in a situation.
I did not allow it. The trainer did. She wanted to observe, and she told the parent that this is not a familiar dog to your child. The dog's not familiar with your child, but it was part of the training.
And I guess it would be my recommendation that you do have a say in the training that goes on with Brownie, and that does put yourself at a liability if you're allowing, especially unknown children, to interact with her while she has that history.
I was unaware that it was going to happen as quickly as it did, but the child approached the dog. She was sitting. She was listening to commands. She was sitting, and like I said, I wasn't aware that this was even going to happen. So it caught me off guard that it even did happen, and the trainer saw the shock and concern on my face as she was doing it. So, but she's been responding to the training. I'm continuing to work with her. She has, I have to schedule another training session with her in a couple more weeks. So, and I understand her concern, that I should have been, but like I said, I was unaware that this was even going to happen.
The question, so we have, just so I'm clear on, we have a bite that occurred on the 16th, and that's backed up by the photograph by a parent. Bite back in
2016?
16, correct. And then we had a second one in October of 2016 again?
No.
Nope.
So the information gets a little confusing because when I received notification in October of 2016, I received notification of 2 bites. Only one had just recently happened the day before.
Okay.
The previous bite was the bite that hadn't been reported by anybody involved in the situation or by the hospital.
Okay.
I can't speak to as why that wasn't reported, but that is one of the pictures attached.
So it's fair to say, Amy, that bite occurred earlier that year.
Okay. So the one in June of 16, that was that wasn't, they notified us of both the October one and then the one occurring earlier that year in June.
We were notified at the same time.
The same time of both of those bites?
Yeah.
Okay. And there's one more in 2017, and it's written here that it came from an anonymous report of a dog bite to the face of a 16-year-old girl at 23 Perry. I do have a question for you, Hannah. Are you that 16-year-old girl?
Yeah.
That was you.
That was
And when you had shown up, you observed a scratch?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess the question is it a scratch or is it a bite?
So I would consider it a tooth scratch, so where the tooth made contact with the skin, broke skin. So it's not a puncture bite. So there is a distinction that that bite wasn't a puncture bite. So it's what would be considered an inhibited bite.
Okay.
So, if her intention was to bite and puncture, that's considered a non-inhibited bite.
Okay.
So she's not holding herself back. The fact that it was a tooth scratch, that would be an inhibited reaction.
And can you tell me how the scratch occurred on your nose or the bite?
Well, it was a morning before I left for school. She was already in the car. I was just getting all my stuff together, and I went behind, I came around the couch, and I was petting her, and then I was petting her from behind, though.
Okay.
And I went around the corner to give her, I leaned down to give her a kiss, and her tooth scratched me.
Okay. So you agree with it was what Ms. Contoy said,
Yeah.
it was a scratch with the dog
It
tooth?
wasn't, it didn't go all the way through, so
Okay.
it wasn't.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to be clear on the bite versus scratch. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just 2 more observations, Mr. Chairman. One, all the bites apparently took place on faces. It would seem to indicate you were getting too close to the dog, in my opinion. The dog isn't aggressively going after somebody who's standing up. If somebody has put their face, is the dog large or small?
About this
a
big.
little thing.
She's
So
not that
someone's
big, she
had
comes
to-
about knee high,
She's
right?
about 40 pounds.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
about 40 pounds.
So someone
knee
has
high.
to, so these people have all had to intrude on the dog's space intentionally. That's
Yeah.
number one. And number two, how old is the dog?
7.
7 years old. I think it may be too late for any kind of therapy for a 7-year-old dog. That's just my opinion.
There's a big difference between behavior, aggressiveness, and dangerousness with a dog. So you're saying, and I definitely hear all your friends with the letters and such stating the dog's not aggressive. It's more the dangerousness. The dog's reacting in a dangerous fashion. So there are some observations and very distinct differences that we need to consider here as well. Anything else?
Steve, if I can also offer, so the town also, part of the town response, obviously we have a responsibility to follow up on complaints made to the town. So obviously, you can see in the timeline and from the animal control officer, we are responding to contact made to the town, so to, to explain why the town is involved. Town has been contacted regarding these serious concerns. Obviously, taking no action would be not responsible
Right.
as well.
And I could also speak to, and I believe Mr. Rafferty, you were, how do we get involved? Is the anytime someone enters a local emergency room in regards to a dog bite, that triggers it. The ER is mandated to file a report, a dog bite report, and then issue it to the municipality. Same as if it was a stab wound or something like that, they'd come in not by ambulance and the police weren't notified. It's a notification process that's covered. Am I correct? Just want to make sure I'm
Yes,
correct.
yep, yep. And the reasoning for that, again, being the potential rabies exposure, they consider it. Any bite is potential exposure to the disease virus, and with it being a fatal virus, it's something that we take very seriously, that the state takes seriously. We want to make sure that anybody that's bitten by an animal is protected, because again, there's a very slim chance that if somebody becomes infected with rabies that they will survive once they start to show symptoms of it. And if I may, I would just also like to add one more thing in regards to the town's involvement. Up until the point of a hearing being requested, as the animal control officer, I can offer recommendations to an owner and make suggestions for ways to alleviate a behavior or circumstances that might be causing something like a bite to occur, but it's not until we get to the point of a hearing that those recommendations could be ordered to the owner to ensure that they're followed.
What's that?
If I may,
please.
the animal control officer has also prepared recommendations.
Okay.
And can also review what the choices are at this point for the board
Okay.
regarding this hearing.
All right. Okay. Okay. Probably close the discussion and then look at recommendations.
Sure. Yep. So, vote to close discussion regarding the.
I'll second that. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. So in regards to the board's options, you have some recommendations you would like to propose?
Sure. So the board tonight is able to dismiss the complaint if you don't find the complaint to be valid. You could deem the dog a nuisance dog, or you could deem the dog a dangerous dog. If Brownie were to be deemed a dangerous dog, in accordance with Mass General Law, you do have to choose one of the prescribed orders in the MGL one or more, so you could decide to choose more if you were to go that route. If Brownie was deemed a nuisance dog, you aren't required to choose from that list. It can be a little bit more broad, but you do also have the option to choose from that list from the Mass General Law. So my recommendation, with consideration that there aren't any small children permanently residing in the home, and since we don't have a history of animal control-related violations at the property, it is my recommendation that due to the 3 reported and confirmed bites in approximately a year and a half, that Brownie would be deemed a dangerous dog with the following orders. That Brownie be humanely restrained and prevented from leaving the property off leash, provided, however, that no order shall provide that a dog deemed dangerous, so Brownie, be chained, tethered, or otherwise tied to an inanimate object, including but not limited to a tree, post, or building. That number 2, Brownie be confined to the premise of the keeper of the dog, provided that confined shall mean confined securely indoors or confined outdoors in a securely enclosed and locked pen or dog run area, provided that the area shall have a secure roof, and if there is no floor to the enclosed area, that the walls be embedded not less than 2 feet into the ground. And that the dog Brownie also be provided shelter from the elements while in that outdoor area. And that while outdoors with children, Brownie should be confined to a securely enclosed and locked pen or dog run area and shall not be on a leash, lead, or tether in the yard while children are present. And 3, when visitors enter the home, Brownie shall be securely and humanely muzzled while in the company of the visitors, or be securely contained in a room out of access of the visitors without a muzzle. So she can be muzzled and be allowed to interact with people, or if the muzzle is not going to be placed on her, securely confined to a separate room where people can't enter at will. When removed from the premise of the owner or the premise of a person keeping Brownie, the dog shall be securely and humanely muzzled and restrained on a chain or tethering device with a minimum tensile strength of 300 pounds and not exceeding 3 feet in length. 4, that the owner shall provide the licensing authority, the town clerk's office, and animal control permanent identification of Brownie in the form of photographs and a microchip implantation. So the recommendations 1 through 4 are directly from the Mass General Law. 5 and 6, that the owner shall provide proof of training services with a CCPDT dog trainer. So that is an accreditation specific to dog trainers, a certified behaviorist or a veterinary behaviorist within 60 days of the order. 6, that the owner shall report any bite incidents that may occur in the future to animal control within 24 hours of the occurrence. It's my recommendation that if the owner is able to comply with those orders, I would be comfortable with that, but if the owners are unable to meet those conditions, I would recommend euthanasia.
A few questions in regards to this. In regards to number 4, what cost is associated with microchip implantation?
So the microchip implantation, it depends on where that's done. So the town actually holds a low-cost vaccine and microchip clinic every year, so coming up in the next actually couple weeks. So the cost at that clinic is about $20 to $25. And that is a one-time cost unless she's already microchipped.
Yep, she's already microchipped.
Then we would just need a copy of that microchip registration and the numbers associated with it.
The Petco dog trainer that you're seeing, are they CCPDT?
I have no idea.
No.
Are you aware
if they are?
She said she's certified.
Okay. Are you aware what their
I'm not
certification is?
aware of the specific training that the Petco dog trainers go through. The CCPDT trainers go through an extensive training course that involves a written exam and certain hours of training. My concern, any kind of training is better than no training for the dog in general. But from what I'm aware of, the training at Petco or available at Petco facilities is more obedience-based training. It's great that Brownie has been receiving obedience training. Any dog should be well-mannered and obedient. But my concerns with Brownie go beyond general obedience. It's an underlying behavioral issue that does need specialized eye to look at that, address it, and make recommendations to what can keep everybody safe.
And Ms. Chaplin, can you go over with me again, do you have any questions or concerns with what was read by these recommendations?
So, I mean, other than the training is very, very expensive.
I saw that you quoted $500 for the training?
Just for them to...
Consult.
Just to consult. So training is going to be much more expensive than that. And that's just for an hour of consult. That's outrageous. And a lot of what we've been doing with the Petco trainer is both obedience and behavior. We're working on both of those things with her.
Would you agree that right now Brownie is restrained, leaving the property? That's happening now.
Oh, yeah.
And right now she's being kept on premises. She's not allowed to roam around. And right now she is humanely muzzled with the basket muzzle that you were talking about. Okay.
Yeah, we're meeting most of those conditions already.
Okay.
With the exception of the enclosed pen, but right now, I wouldn't be able to do any construction on an enclosed pen because I have to construct room for my dad at this point. So my property's going to be a mess in a couple months.
How is she when she's outside?
I have a lead, I have a 25-foot line
Dog
that
run?
allows her to go, that allows her to go and do her business on her side of the house. And then I have a 15-foot line dog run that allows her to 15 feet in circumference outside it's up on the hill away from the pool, away from the children.
And does that meet that requirement, what you're talking?
It doesn't meet that specific requirement. So my concern with Brownie being outside on a run is that doesn't prevent a child from approaching Brownie while she's on the run, whether it be children in the home or any other situation. And we don't want to get into a situation where we're saying Brownie needs to be muzzled 24/7. I would not consider that fair or humane to the dog. So by having an enclosed structure in the outdoor area, it would provide a safe space for Brownie to be outside without a muzzle, and also ensure that the children can't physically get close enough for a bite or anything like that to occur.
Could that be, does it have to be right now? Could it be a couple months down the line while I'm doing the construction?
So that's something that the board could consider. I mean, consideration does also have to take into account the time of the year where the ground still is
Sure.
frozen.
It's all mush.
So to be able to dig
Part of
potentially
the
2
ground
feet
is
in
mush, the
ground.
rest of it is frozen.
I have a question, because I don't understand. Is that okay if I ask a question?
I think we've kind of moved beyond that, though. I'm sorry.
I don't understand.
Having the dog on the run with an adult in the yard with the dog, does that still not comply with the...
It doesn't comply with the wording
Okay.
here, with the dog being tethered to an inanimate object.
Okay.
But
But
again, the
obviously-
concern being that when the previous bites happened, except for the most recent one, there was an adult present at the time. So I would still have that
So
same
anytime
concern.
outside of the house, if it's not an enclosure, it has to be a 3-foot leash to be compliant.
To be compliant
with the section 157.
Yes, so it, like walk on a
Right,
leash.
right.
Yeah.
We don't take her for walks because she's too excitable. If she sees a rabbit, she goes nuts.
So
I'll do.
a locked pen or dog run area, what would define a dog run area? I would assume some sort of fencing around it or something like that?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, it's just
Which would be another low, it
the
would be...
same wording, or different wording for the same structure, really.
Okay.
What people would more consider like an outdoor kennel,
Okay.
so a fenced-in area.
And, because with the enclosed structure, we're talking about, I mean, ground, things, embedded into the ground 2 feet, stuff like that, where something could be, the fence could be placed around the dog area, and that could be an option.
So the 2 feet into the ground is just if there isn't a solid base to the floor of the penned-in area. That's to ensure that a dog's not able to dig out. A dog's less likely to dig 2 feet and get under the fence than if the fence was at ground level without a floor.
Okay.
I think it's meant, the wording that is coming out of Mass General Law, they're trying to provide, an outline of what you need for that outside kennel. Trying to obviously keep safety in mind for the dog and for the people involved that are going to interact with the dog.
And just to touch on Ms. Jacqueline's statement that a lot of these are things that she's already doing in
Right,
the home.
right.
The town, just before this point, was not able to ensure that those be met,
Right.
that those conditions are followed.
Do you have any other comments on the recommendations which you had outlined here? No? So in hearing none, I think I'll make a recommendation
Make a motion.
in regards to what Ms. Contois had put forth. And in the recommendations, I would move, I'm just going to list off the numbers unless you would want me to read them for clarity for you.
Second.
Okay?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
If I could just, I think you would have to make a determination as to if you were going to deem the dog dangerous,
Okay.
a nuisance, or dismiss.
So we'll do it in a 2-part. Okay. So
Right,
we'll
if you
take
were
a,
going to consider any of the recommendations.
Okay. So could you just, again, difference between nuisance and dangerous? Just a definition.
Sure. So, well, in accordance with MGL, with Mass General Law, the difference between the two is the following outcome. So a dangerous dog, you have to be compliant with one or more of the remedial actions that the Mass General Law prescribes. A nuisance dog, there's more leeway in the orders that the hearing authority could put forth, with consideration that a lot of times a nuisance dog may be a dog that's routinely getting loose, causing some kind of disturbance within a community. It's typically when you see a nuisance dog. Not to say that a biting dog could not also be considered a nuisance dog.
Okay.
And if I may, if the dog is deemed dangerous, then you do have to pick one
right,
of
at
the
least one
prescribed
or,
MGL requirements,
Mhm.
whereas the nuisance is broader. You don't have to necessarily pick from the Mass General Law list, but you may feel as a board, you may want to choose.
Okay.
And to clarify in my recommendation, the recommended orders 1 through 4 are pulled from Mass General Law. 5 and 6 are not.
Right. Okay.
So in regards to the dog being nuisance or dismissing nuisance or dangerous, do you have a motion to make?
I think in given the bite history that we do have and the pictures supplied by, in the evidence by the town inspector with the 3.5. You know, there are 2 bites to the face of young children that could have potentially damaged a cosmetic appearance with it affecting the lip and a specific portion of the lip. I would determine the dog to be a dangerous dog.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye. In giving and making that determination that the dog is a dangerous dog, I'm prepared to make recommendations on the recommendations supplied by Ms. Contois. The first one being that Brownie shall be humanely restrained and prevented from leaving the property off leash, provided, however, that no order shall provide that a dog deemed dangerous be chained, tethered, or otherwise tied to an inanimate object, including but not limited to a tree or the post. The third one, the number 3, when visitors enter the home, Brownie shall be securely and humanely muzzled, while in the company of visitors be securely contained in a room out of access of visitors without a muzzle. When removed from the premises, the owner of the dog, the owner or the premises of the person keeping Brownie, the dog shall be securely and humanely muzzled and restrained with a chain or other tethering device, having a minimum tensile strength of 300 pounds and not exceeding 3 feet. And the last one being the owner shall report any bite incidents that may occur in the future of animal control within the last 24 hours. So in summary, my recommendation is that of number 1, number 3, and number 6. And I can speak to, if you want me to speak
We have
to...
a motion on the floor, unless you want to modify that before I second it.
Nope.
All right, I'll second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
And you wanted to address another point?
So I just, how I came to that conclusion was, I think that, the animal inspector certainly has done her due diligence in regards to your animal. Put in a lot of time, put in a lot of effort, working with you, getting, the proper materials to you. It's unfortunate that we're at this step. I think that, typically I think we'd like to see things not come to this. A lot of these in my recommendations you had, when you testified, you're already doing some of these. So now this makes that a little bit more official, so that this is now what has to happen, and will happen going forward. I do have concerns with cost in regards to the training, the certified behaviorist, or the certified in the time period. I understand that you may be under some financial duress, given some medical issues with you and your family. So I think that, and I'm confident that now that we're at this step and you understand the seriousness of this hearing, that that has to happen. But we are giving you leeway in regards to some of the cost associated with this, okay? The other one is number 2. I can see a lot of cost with roof and securing and everything like that. Again, giving you leeway in the form of cost in regards to this. Brownie's already microchipped, and number 4 didn't apply.
I'd like to add to that, although I felt that the training would be paramount. Again, dogs are not people. We say they're part of the family, but no, we're part of the pack. And if we don't understand the pack mentality, there's going to be friction. Many children pull dogs away from their dishes and don't get bit. Many children get mauled. So Mr. Otterson, I think, was very considerate of some of your family conditions, trying to relieve some of the financial obligations that a certain order would cause, but trusting that you would certainly, and Amy, if you would provide her with that additional, if not already, information on other steps that you could take, I would strongly advise you and recommend that you continue with the training.
Absolutely.
I would also look into the qualifications. Obedience training is great, but is it behavioral training? The dog is responding as a dog, but the dog is not responding as an appropriate pack member. So a higher trained professional may have better ideas as to how to manage the situation rather than a young girl that's got 6 months training at a pet store. I'm not saying that they're not good, but from an obedience training point, it's good you've gone that way. And I know it's an expense,
I would have gone sooner, but my
But
dad
if-
has been very seriously ill.
but
so-
if we get another report of another dog bite, I don't know if the board could be as lenient.
Okay.
The dog is responding. You need to step up as the alpha in the pack and protect the rest of the pack.
Okay. Okay.
And again, and just to be clear, at the end of this, you know, Ms. Contois did recommend that if these were not met, you know, euthanasia could always be another option. So again,
That's not
we're-
something that we want to see happen.
I don't think anybody wants to see that
No.
happen, but again, that is always a
I know.
possibility, and again, we're already at this step. So again, you know, I wanted to, you know, thank Ms. Contois for your work and in regards to preparing this very thorough report with photographic evidence. And for you to coming to the hearing as well and being able to speak your side. And Hannah, thank you for coming as well. But I think, you know, yeah.
Thank you. If there's a motion to close the hearing, and
So moved. Motion to
now
close.
you need to make the motion.
Make the motion to close the hearing.
I'll second that. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You'll be getting more information from Ms. Contois.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that was the only other item on the agenda, except for scheduling our next meeting.
That's correct.
I've been trying to work on keeping my Mondays clear.
I figured we put at least the two. Now, Paula obviously can still, she can still send out the email,
Okay.
you know, to see if that, because that seems to work when she sends out the email for people to respond. But I figured at least if we had a couple of dates in the pipeline to identify if those even work from, and maybe you don't have to schedule. Schedule for this room. So with meeting space being at a premium here at the town, we always have that as first priority. So the 2nd and the 4th, so it's March 12th and March 26th. We don't, obviously, as you know, we don't always have to have 2 meetings per month. It's kind of as needed and as, you know, as hearings are requested or needed. But we can start with, we can start with an email out, because obviously Carolyn is not present for this one. But does that sound okay to send out?
Yep. Yeah, right now, the 12th and the 26th appear open. I've got a few things penciled in on the 12th to be out of state, but there's nothing definite there.
Okay.
So again, they're both open. The 26th would be better for me,
Okay.
but
They're both open for me as we are now, so I
Okay.
think, you know,
okay.
So we'll get,
email and those
yeah,
are-
we'll get an email out, and we'll see if Carolyn has her schedule yet for March, and then we'll kind of go from there,
Okay.
if that works for you guys.
Okay.
Okay.
I want to
beautiful.
thank you for your hard work.
Thank
I
you.
know these are never easy, especially with the multiples, protecting the kids, of course. I firmly believe on the education part of educate, don't legislate. Continue to provide her with what she needs, and I know you're always available.
We're always here to support
Yeah.
people, but
Yeah, word out there is call Amy. So, anything else?
I don't. I'll make a motion to close the meeting.
I'll second, and thank you. Good night.